Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Farah Karima, as your MC. And welcome back to Infrastructure Connect Digital Series, a series of activities from Indonesia Infrastructure Week, Konstruksi Indonesia in Beton Indonesia 2020. This event is accessible through the digital Infrastructure Connect platform, and register yourself on infrastructureconnect.id to get an access. Before we start the webinar, please allow me to inform you that during the webinar event, participants can ask questions through the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Please mention your name, your company or institution, and also the question addressed to which speaker through the Q&A feature. You can ask the question in Bahasa, and we will translate and answer in English. And also, the moderator later on will select some of the questions that will be delivered to the panelists. And there will be souvenirs from Geoforce Indonesia for 10 best questions. And the winner will be announced in Indonesia Infrastructure Week Instagram at Indonesia Infrastructure Week. And last but not least, the rules for obtaining e-certificate and presentation material will be delivered at the end of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, all participants, before we start the webinar, I will be delighted to welcome Bapak Erwin Aksa, Vice Chairman for Infrastructure and Construction Sector of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Bapak Erwin Aksa, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you everybody. Good evening for all the participants in the webinar today for Indonesia Infrastructure Week, incorporated with the Minister of Public Works, Construction of Indonesia, and Indonesia Concrete Association. First of all, I would like to greet everybody here. Ibu Dewi from Secretary General of Construction Development, Minister of Public Works and Public Housing of the Republic of Indonesia, Singapore Business Federation, National Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Malaysia, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Board of Trade Thailand, Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Laos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to all ladies and gentlemen, member of Central and Regional of Kadin, and the attendees in this webinar. First of all, allow me to praise Almighty God. Because of His blessing and mercy, we are all able to gather here today in the virtual focus group discussion with the theme Construction Industry from Survivor to Rebound. The impact of COVID-19 on the construction industry in the Southeast Asian country is extraordinary. For a year, business actors in the field of construction have been facing supply chain disruption, mobility issue, or traffic in the trade and services, project completion, uncertainty, as well as financing. In this occasion, I invite all business members, all businessmen, members of Chamber of Commerce and Industry, especially in the field of construction and infrastructure of ASEAN countries, to work together and share with each other to find a way out against the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we must not lose spirit and optimism because of the COVID-19 pandemic will surely end. WHO predicts that the pandemic will end in 2 years if we can distribute the vaccine properly. President of Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Jokowi, at the 75th General Assembly of the United Nations, stated that the vaccine will be a game changer or will bring change in the war against pandemic in the world. But more importantly, the president called on all countries to work together in an effort to ensure that all have equal access to safe and affordable vaccine. And today, virtual discussion activity can be a starting point to establish cooperation between us. From this discussion, we can exchange thought and to find solutions and strategies to work together to achieve the same goal of the economy in each country to grow, rise, and recover in 2021. We, on behalf of Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, express our appreciation to the government of the Republic of Indonesia, which has encouraged sustainable infrastructure development and financing initiative in ASEAN. At the ASEAN Finance Minister and Central Bank Governors meetings last October, the Indonesian government stated that the initiative was a driving force for economic recovery in the region. The potential for sustainable financing development for ASEAN countries is wide open, especially given the rapid growth of the global bond market. Regarding the issue of financing, Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry hopes that the private sector will be given access to finance through the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund, through the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility. This facility is an important breakthrough to facilitate private involvement in financing of green infrastructure in the region. The facility has now secured funding commitment from development partners of US dollar 1.5 billion US dollar, and in the near future will start distribution of financing for a number of strategic projects in several countries, including Indonesia. Hopefully today, discussion will be able to contribute to the recovery of construction sector in ASEAN countries to rise 2021. Construction will be the engine of growth in this pandemic 2021. This construction will bring a lot of sector to start to grow, and I think construction will be the major focus for all countries, including Indonesia, for 2021 onward. So thank you everybody for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bapak Erwin Aksa, for the opening remarks. And now please join me to welcome Ibu Dewi Komistriana, Secretary of Directorate General of Construction Development, Ministry of Public Works and Housing of Republic of Indonesia. Ibu Dewi, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, MC. Greeting to the Honorable Bapak Erwin Aksa, Deputy Chairman for Construction and Infrastructure, Chamber of Commerce and Industry Indonesia, the Honorable Bapak Sarif Burhanuddin, I think this is represented by Pak Dandung, Board of Advisor for Infrastructure and Construction Sector, and also the Honorable Bapak Felino, Mr. Felino, Director for Urban Development and Infrastructure, Philippines Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Honorable Mr. Lee Heng-gui, Executive Director of the Social Economic Research Center, the Associated Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Malaysia, and also the Honorable all ladies and gentlemen, Board Member of Central and Regional of Chamber of Commerce and Industry Indonesia, and FGD virtual attendees. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On this occasion, we'd like to convey our high appreciation to Kadin for initiating a meeting as well as a dialogue between the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in ASEAN country in a virtual focus group discussion with the theme Construction Industry from Survival to Rebound. At the 37th ASEAN Summit meeting last November, all ASEAN member countries agreed to work together and to deal with COVID-19. Especially regarding the presence and production of vaccine in 2021. The summit also discussed economic development priority in the region with partners to deal with the economic impact and social impact of COVID-19. From an economic point of view, all of us who attended this event very well understood that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the construction industry in ASEAN country is not only about financing, I think, but also supply chains disruption, mobility problems, and uncertainty of project completion. Although there are construction projects that are still running, not a few have stopped the projects. In addition, part of the implementation of new tender were also postponed. Even though it was severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Indonesia still relies on infrastructure development as one way to improve the country economy. Infrastructure development continue to run because it is the driving force of the national economy, on which hundreds of thousands of construction, service business, and TT depend on millions of workers, as well as means for the government to channel aid funds such as through labor-intensive program. Through this virtual forum, we represent the government to invite entrepreneurs who are also member of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in each ASEAN country to fight from adversity. During a pandemic, entrepreneurs must carry out various innovations so that infrastructure development can continue to run, even be accelerated and become the driving force of the national economy, especially to maintain the sustainability of construction service resources. We must remain optimistic that the pandemic storm will pass. And 2021 will be a year of awakening from adversity. There were two important decisions and become the starting point for an optimistic attitude for ASEAN country to rise up toward economic recovery. And the two decisions came at the 37th ASEAN Summit. First, the ASEAN Declaration on the ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement framework to realize the implementation of the TCA. President Jokowi encouraged the ASEAN Coordinating Council and ASEAN sectoral body to move quickly and efficiently. A number of ways can be taken, for example, realizing the establishment of temporary fast lane and health protocol on departure and arrival, the use of integrated digital platform in the area, determining the port of entry, and strict health protocol provisions. The President hopes that the ASEAN TCA can begin in the first quarter of 2021. The second is the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. The achievement of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership shows the commitment of ASEAN countries to the principle of multilateral trade that is open, fair, and beneficial to all parties. More importantly, it provides new hope and optimism for the post-pandemic economic recovery in the region. This means that intercooperation is very important and inevitable in economic recovery, including the problem of infrastructure development in the region. We from the government hope that the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, especially in the fields of construction and infrastructure in each ASEAN country, can work together, share and help each other in effort to recover the post-pandemic economy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Ibu Dewi Komistriana, for the speech. And today we will be discussing about construction industry from survival to rebound. Present with me today as moderator, Bapak Syahrial Ong, Committee Chairman of National Construction Service Development Board. Please allow me to read his short bio. He is Chairman Swadaya Group Companies and former Chairman Construction Equipment Owners Association atau APAXI, former Secretary General Korean Committee of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, former Chairman ASEAN MRA Business Service Sector Working, and former member of Prasetya Mulia Alumni Advisory Board. And now without further ado, I will turn the time over to Bapak Syahrial Ong to lead this discussion. Pak Ong, the screen is yours. Pak Ong masih mute, Pak. Mohon maaf.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Bapak.
All right. Thank you to our MC, Ms. Farah Karimah, to the Honorable Bapak Erwin Aksa, Vice Chairman of Kadin Indonesia Infrastructure, the Honorable Ibu Dewi Komistriana, Secretary of our Director General Construction Development, Ministry of Public Work and Housing. Good afternoon, fellow speakers, panelists, distinguished guests, media friends, ladies and gentlemen from all over ASEAN, Indonesia, and the cyberspace. Selamat datang dan welcome to this important panel discussion in conjunction with the Infrastructure Connect 2020 organized by Chamber of Commerce Kadin Indonesia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. First of all, as introduced by our MC, my name is Sharia Ong from Construction Development Board Indonesia. I will be your moderator for this discussion session. Since our participants are majority from Indonesia, please allow me also to mix my explanation in both Bahasa Indonesia and in English. Pada sesi diskusi high-level panelis ini, telah hadir para pakar, panelis, dan narasumber dari beberapa negara tetangga ASEAN kita. In this panel discussion, we have our expert and experienced panelists from our neighbor ASEAN countries. So let's now welcome our distinguished and prominent panelists. First is Bapak Dandung Sri Hanimanto to represent Dr. Ingenieur Sarif Burhanuddin, Board of Advisor for Infrastructure and Construction Sector, Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Dandung, please allow me to brief the curriculum vitae for all these three panelists. Bapak Dandung Sri Haminto, engineer, actually is also the President Director of Geoforce Indonesia, and in the field experience is also the Secretary General for the alumni, ILUSA alumni, and also the chair for the Kasgama for the Civil Engineering Alumni Gadjah Mada University. Pak Dandung also the chair for the permanent committee for infrastructure and construction development, member of International Geosynthetic Society, and also the secretary for the Soil Expert Association Indonesia, and also the Vice Secretary General for the PIIS Persatuan Insinyur Indonesia, our Indonesian Engineer Association. And our second speaker, we have our architect Felino Palafox, ECCI Director for Urban Development and Infrastructure, Philippines Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Let me brief a little bit the background of Mr. Felino. Architect and urban planner Jun Palafox has 48 years of experience in architect and 46 years in planning. He was educated in Christ the King's Seminary, University of Santo Tomas, and University of the Philippines. For continuing education, he studied Advanced Management Development Program for Real Estate and 7 other special courses in Harvard University. In May 2017, the Polytechnic University of the Philippines conferred on him the degree Doctor of Fine Arts honoris causa. In April 2018, Architect Palafox was conferred with honorary title as Doctor Fellow of Royal Institute of Singapore, Royal Institute of Architects Singapore, Royal Institute of Development Consultant of Singapore, Royal Institute of Town and Regional Planner of Singapore. Architect
Palafox also lecture in more than 20 countries across the globe, including institutions like Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard.
He
He has traveled and observed more than 1,000 cities in 79 countries.
He is also an active member of various international and national organizations, such as the Council on Tall Building and Urban Habitat, where he is elected as a fellow, Urban Land Institute, American Planning Association, the American Institute of Architects, U.S. Green Building Council, Harvard Alumni Association, United Architects of the Philippines, and fellow Rotary International. He was also elected past chairman and president of the National Real Estate Association, past president of FIAPSI International Real Estate Federation, past president of the Philippine Institute of Environment Planner, and he was the first architect urban planner and past president of the Management Association of the Philippines. He is the governor of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines and chairman of the Environmental and Urban Development Committee of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, trustee of the Philippine Business for the Environment and Swiss Input. Forbes Asia magazine cited him as one of the 48 heroes of philanthropy in Asia. In November 2017, he was awarded by the GCI Senate as one of the 3 top outstanding Filipino for the field of architecture. In November 2018, his book was awarded as Best Book of Profession for the Philippines toward Resilient Cities and Communities in the 37th National Book Award. He was recognized by the Professional Regulatory Commission as the 2019 Outstanding Professional of the Year in the field of environmental planning. Architect Palafox founded, led, and managed Palafox Associates and Palafox Architecture in carrying out more than 1,722 projects in 40 countries. The planning of 44 billion square meters of land bagi peserta yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan sudah dijelaskan oleh MC tadi, agar menuliskan pertanyaan pada Q&A, tersedia 10 hadiah menarik dari panitia bagi pertanyaan yang terpilih. Jika pertanyaan tidak sempat dibacakan, maka akan dijawab oleh pembicara dan panelis via email setelah acara. Juga mohon jangan lupa mengisi feedback form di chat box dan memilih tombol chat untuk mendapatkan e-certificate dan e-magazine. To start this panel discussion, we already heard the brief and then the opening speech from Bapak Erwin Aksa about the background and the theme of the goals of our event today. So our today event theme is construction industry from survival to rebound. Bapak-bapak dan ibu-ibu yang terhormat, Karena waktu kita cukup, mari kita berikan waktu masing-masing 15 sampai 20 menit kepada masing-masing panelis untuk menyampaikan pengalaman dan pandangan beliau untuk masa depan industri konstruksi khususnya di ASEAN. Since we have sufficient time, let's give each panelist 15 to 20 minutes to share their knowledge, experience, insight, and view on how to survive and rebound post-COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's welcome our first panelist, Bapak Dandung Sri Haminto, to represent Dr. Insinyur Sarif Burhanuddin. The floor is yours, Pak Dandung.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ang, for your time. I will start to share my presentation. This already appeared, Mr. Ong? Mr. Ong?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Put in the yes.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for your time. Give the script to me. I would like to share some matters, some discussion actually with my advisor, Pak Sharif. He regret that actually he will present by himself, but immediately he have to attend a program that together with Pak Menteri, Pak Minister of our Public Works, exactly at the same time. So he say sorry, but the matter is the content of the presentation we arranged together. So I think it's no problem because as a result of our discussion with Pak Sharif. Ladies and gentlemen, terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekalian. I will try to mix language with Pak Ong, so because the attendees of the conference will be major in Indonesia, but we have to also talk with Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, I think can speak in bahasa as well, yeah. And Pelino, I don't know.
Boleh bahasa.
Okay, this discussion is very casual. I think the idea of the event is to share about what's the condition on the construction or infrastructure sector impacted by COVID pandemic. As you know, that pandemic is very terrible. I think not only in Indonesia but also in ASEAN, and in the world. I think there are so many problems with the pandemic, not only in the construction sector, of course, but also in the very wide sector of our life, from finance, from food, from energy, everything impacted by this pandemic. Now back today, we only talk about the construction sector. As already mentioned by Pak Ong, that actually I already move a lot in engineering and construction sector. I myself as contractor. My presentation together with Pak Sharif, we think about the COVID-19 pandemic at glance. Is very rough to figure out what's going on in Indonesia especially, and I hope from Philippines, from Malay also give the figure out about what's the condition. So we by that we can feel about our togetherness with ASEAN countries. And then about the problem facing and challenge and what already done by our government, and of course will be impact with our private sector as well. And then about the potential for construction and some recommendation how we have to rebound on the next year for sure. This is the COVID data from official data from our government. I'm sorry, in Indonesia. Hopefully, Mr. Lee and Rino can understand that now we still have actually big problem with the pandemic because number of positive COVID is still increasing, not decreasing yet. With many factors, even our government already gives some regulation about limitation of movement, limitation of the number of employee work in the office. But in fact, we still have the problem about the number of increasing. But even number of positive COVID, but we have also good news that the number of incurring is also growing. So we can take a look at the data. This can you see this from data from March, I think March, April, May, June, and so on until now it's November. Can you see this is the number of positive weekly? So this is the weekly case. Can you see that in the until the end of November, now is the beginning of December, the number of positive COVID is still growing, not decreasing yet. So this we have to very big homework for everybody, not us, but for our government, for our people, how we can handle properly of our COVID pandemic. And then this, but the death percentage of the death is decreasing. So it's different with the early of the pandemic. The number of rate of death is very high now because of the maybe increasing of public care about the medicine and etc. So number of death is decreasing significantly. Now it's about 3% something. So it is the good news for sure. And then also rate of the curing also growing significantly and from beginning. From March until November, so it's also good news. So I think this even the number of the positive increasing, but the number of death is decreasing, and number of curing also increasing. So this is the another side of our story. But in fact, of course, everybody here wish the pandemic will over very soon. So we can live back to normal. We can develop our country normally again. But in fact, still not yet. So we have to do a lot of things. Okay, this what's the problem our construction industry deal with? After COVID-19, the budget of especially in public works and housing, because this is the like a driver of the construction sector in Indonesia, from budget about $8 billion or 120 trillion Indonesian rupiah. But because of the COVID, there were some relocation or refocusing, we call it refocusing and relocation of the budget, become only 5.3 million, or about the 80 trillion Indonesian rupees to care about the COVID. So can you see, imagine almost half, 50, maybe 60% something from the initial budget. So the contractor suffer very much, project decreasing very much as well. The money go to the contractor also decreasing. Our member also decreasing from about at the last year maybe 40,000 member of our association of contractor, of course, and now about maybe 20 something. So it's stable for us because our number of our member is decreased. And then impact of budget regulation from our government. There are, as Ms. Dewi said, that there are delay program, cannot complete it, and consequently, because of the delay, additional budget also required. So we need more money to create or build the same thing, because we have to delay this year become next year. This is a consequence of the pandemic. And then in Indonesia, we know that there are project, we call it single year, maybe, or multi years. So now all the project single year must be changed to the multi-year projects, because we have to our government cut the budget. So normally the project finish within 1 year, but cannot. Now we have to move maybe another year, maybe become 2 or 3 years, depend on the size of the projects. Then project that not start yet on this year, many of them is postponed, maybe cancel or delay, something like that. So it's also suffer our construction industry environment. And then of course, because of limitation of our workers, supply chain will be affected, not flow very well. And then shortage of the material, limitation of transportation and equipment. So also this impact us because of the pandemic. And then investor, construction industry, of course, income is reduction very much. This the problem facing on construction industry is a very short background of this industry. And then our government just states the new law. We call it job creation law, or maybe it's omnibus law. It is a law for every law. The intended to make ease of the investment opportunity. So we invite investor from abroad, from anywhere, from ASEAN country, from Europe, from United States, to come with create a much easier process to invest in our country in many sectors, not only in construction, but also in food, energy, transportation, logistics, and etc. So the regulation now is already amended by legislator, and now already become law. And now we are start to make derivation of the law to implementation. Hopefully will be soon. So hopefully investor come to our country with many number of the investor. And then for the license of the opportunity to doing business in Indonesia also reduced. If the business are less risk, of course, our government create some easier permission process. But of the high risk, of course, still strictly about the permission. And then, of course, now our government expect business person and worker become a backbone of construction industry, not government anymore, because we, as you know, government may be less in the budget, and now we invite private to get more involved in the construction and infrastructure project. And then the challenge of the law, like I said, there is the problem. There is already our government makes a new law about the easier to be doing business, easier to make investigation. Of course, in the more micro things, our worker needs to certify. I think from public works now push us to our workers have the certificate both national and international level. And then of course our government also expects more business person, because number of the businessmen in Indonesia is still small compared to other countries like maybe Singapore, maybe Vietnam. Our government push people to do being businessman, entrepreneurship. So number of entrepreneurs become maybe more than 5%, something like that. And then, of course, because of demand of the construction, our government also push the contractor, not general contractor, but also the specialist contractor. And now we have to think about the supply chains management become more efficient and more effective. And what's we have done by our government actually regarding the COVID, our government also already published or released the new minister instruction, especially about the how we have to facing with the COVID, because the way of doing construction, the way everything will change. So the government allowed to change the resource of material. For example, because of difficulties of resource, shortage of the import material, so the government allowed the contractor change the specification, change the material, in order the ongoing project, even only 0.5% can be finished on the right time. And then also our government also allowed our contractor to ask additional costs because of the health and safety standard, the new health and safety standards because of the pandemic with some addendum of the contracts. And then also, as I said before, if any single project become the multi-project, also already arranged by government, so the contractor cannot to worry about, for example, because of lack of supply, lack of the worker, the project, the extended of the finishing of project can be extended until 2 or 3 years. Normally, in the contract 1 year, because of the pandemic, our government allows to extend of the finishing of the projects. Of course, this related with the currency. Currency also we have to change because, as you know, if we cannot finish the project on time, we will be punished. But because of the COVID, government released the regulation that even not finished, we are not punished because of the delay of the works. And then also our government released a regulation also about bidding for national strategic project with the easier way, with more efficient, with more transparent. So it is the push our government to do to give better environment of the business. And then what's our potential growth on the next year? Everybody expect now that next year will be better future, hopefully. But even ourselves think it is not or yes, we're still thinking about that, because the number of the COVID is still growing, but in opposite, the rate of death decreasing. So it is the good thing as well. I think from Malay, from Philippines can share also how the condition and how to adapt with this condition. So from Minister of Economic, we expect to recover to grow on the next year. And then from Minister of Public Works, even now the budget is much bigger, much higher than even the last year. As informed before, this year the budget about only $8 billion now become $10 billion. This is intended to boost of the economic. As you know, because construction is now a key sector of contributing towards economic growth. So our government know about that. So construction infrastructure given the big budget, we happy, of course. Hopefully from other country as well, the same thing. And supply chain, of course, as we talk about the industry, not only talk about the services, but also talk about the industry from upstream until downstream. So our government and our businessmen now think about to use more domestic resources. From the data, because from pandemic, we realized that our country still depend on the imported product. Now our awareness to use more local resource become higher and higher, and expected by the methods, by the way the local resource will be increasing, and our sustainable and the strongest of the industry will become stronger and stronger. And what's our recommendation? Now, a contractor as association and Kadin as well as because Kadin there are several member of the association encourage contractor and constructor worker to become specialists because if everybody or every company only general, the appreciation will be less. But if more company move on the specialist will be different. And to handle technology knowledge, if we have become special, will be more appreciation. And then of course about the industry, not only services. We work together now with our country, with our regulator from government and also to private sector. How to think about how we develop the industry, the upstream sector from the resource of material, resource of technology, to boost about the more local content, not only depending on the imports from everywhere. And now I think from the think about region, also we have to think together because it's very small area. We talk about the Malay, Singapore, Philippines. We think about the regional resource to be used more bigger. And then of course,
2 more minutes, Pak.
Yes, it's already finished. And then finally, we have to implement about the strictly protocol of the COVID-19 because safety, health is number one. If you construct very fast but ignore the safety and health of our people will be wrong. So hopefully all we have to work together, not only in Indonesia. We think about the regional, we cooperate, we sharing about knowledge, sharing how to handle the pandemic, and think about to rebound together, not only Indonesia, but rebound together with our neighbor ASEAN. Thank you, Pak Ong. This is our short sharing. Expected discussion will be more productive to know each other, how condition in our lovely neighbor. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Pak Dandung, for your excellent insight and elaboration on Indonesia construction industry profile and during this COVID pandemic. And then also you touch about the future potential with the new law and then investment opportunity. You just make exactly 19 minutes of the time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So now, next, let us now welcome our second panelist, Architect Felino Palafox, who will share his knowledge and experience with a long experience as a PCCI Director for Urban Development and Infrastructure, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The floor is yours, Architect Palafox. You are still mute. You have to unmute. Architect Palafox, you have to unmute.
Yeah, we're unmuting now. Okay, now. Yeah, thank you, sir, fellow speakers and panelists. Thank you for sharing and thank you for inviting me here. And I only learned today that I have 20 minutes. So I'm supposed to just verbalize it. And even the invitation is short notice. And on behalf of PCCI, Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry, and our president, Ambassador Rico, I'll be sharing you our experience, and part of it's personal experience also. So I took the liberty of sharing big ticket projects that I was also involved in. And the spending priorities now of the Philippine government is reset, addressing the pandemic, that's healthcare and cash transfer for the poor. And reset, rebound, recover. And for the rebound, reviving infrastructure development, and recover, adapting to the post-pandemic life, food security, industry, livelihood, social protection, education, good governance, law, public order and safety, and environment and disaster risk resiliency. The proposed budget, so I could not share it because it's still in Congress, is the proposed budget for next year is 25% of budget will go to infrastructure, which is 5.4% of gross domestic product, $23 billion for infrastructure versus 20 billion for 2020. The 23 billion is for 2021 infrastructure. And I've been trying to classify this infrastructure that I just got today. And I call it, we have progressive infrastructure, airports, international seaports, and international hotels and hospitals. That's one of them. Then these were focused on hard infrastructure. We have this build program. And as director for urban development infrastructure for the Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry, I'm also advocating to our committee green infrastructure. It should not all be gray infrastructure. And also digital infrastructure. I think the sunrise industries with this pandemic is it's healthcare, food, and digital infrastructure. And as shared by Honorable Erwin Aksa, the biggest multiplier engine of growth is really construction. And hopefully we will, I'm cautiously optimistic of next year. And we might have the vaccine end of 2021 or early 2022. And infectious disease expert has shared with us in international webinar, we should be prepared that this COVID-19 is fast mutating. So we could have a COVID-20, 21, 22, or the rest of our lives. So we should also plan for the worst case scenario, how we can address, adapt, and coexist with the COVID. And I think with this, if we just share our 3 big projects that I'm personally part with, and pre-pandemic, 10% of our projects, I mean, my company was government, 90% private sector. But during pandemic, we've been fortunate enough to get 30% of government projects now, and 70% private sector. Interestingly, some private sector, like tourism, we're doing a lot of hotels and also tourism master plans for different islands. So that's the positive thing about it. But it's really a big challenge. The Philippines is the longest lockdown in the world. The lockdown here, call it quarantine, started March 16 this year. And until now, we are in quarantine. And I just got out of the house. You senior citizens like me, I'm 70 years old. We're not supposed to get out of the house. I'm the office now for this conference. So if you could, ma'am, sirs, can we start the video? Just tone down the music background so I can voice over it. A quick clips. So looking positively in the future, and Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry is, we do a lot of advocacy to projects and also giving advisories to government, and they seem to listen more to Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry. So what I'm sharing with you, I hope we could just cut me down if more than 20 minutes. So there's a program of government now because the primacy of Metro Manila is so congested. And the primate city is 10 times larger than the second largest city. So the program of government is regional development, and we'll be sharing it from here. So Clark will be a gateway, international gateway to the Philippines, and to decongest also Metro Manila, even our airport so congested. So better connectivity with the rest of the country, especially Metro Manila and Luzon. And these urban growth centers that are being promoted, encouraged, is to decongest Metro Manila also, because our national development is so imbalanced. It's all focused in Metro Manila. 30% of our GNP is Metro Manila. So we'll have the airport-driven land uses, leisure district, industrial district, technology district, and so on. And the different modes of transportation, as I was starting to share with you. And this is 4,000 hectares out of the 33,000 hectares left behind by the American Air Force as a US base until our Senate took our country to take over the military bases of the US here. So this airport will accommodate 80 million visitors and different land uses. And I hope we'll be able also to influence the architectural topology of the place, with green buildings, green architecture, green urbanism, and more mass transit. But the first two modes of transportation, walking, bicycle, motorcycles, and bus rapid transit. Then we have the railways. The airport now is being upgraded under construction, and it will be open first quarter next year. So our own airport in Manila is so congested already, and that's only 600 hectares. This is 2,000 hectares for the airport, and for that Aerotropolis airport-driven city, it's 4,000 hectares. This who said it? Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go away." So let's learn from this crisis, learn the best practices in the world, and learn lessons also from mistakes made, urban development, even infrastructure development, and so on. And making our cities and communities also more inclusive, more environment friendly, and more sustainable, more livable, and integrating places to live, work, shop, and dine, learn and worship. I hope we'll be able to, the Lady Mayor of Paris is now making Paris a 15-minute city. Everything is within 15 minutes, walking, bicycle, and or public transit. And we tried to, we designed this before the pandemic, and we tried to implement, again, best practices in the world. And open spaces are the lungs of the cities. Especially this pandemic now, they say that with more parks and playground, it improves our immunity to pandemics. The Clark now will become the secondary government center, because if we relocate all the government offices outside Metro Manila, I think we'll reduce the population of Metro Manila by 2 million. But they are not relocating the whole thing. Clark is about 70 kilometers from Metro Manila. I was urban planner architect for the government of Dubai. So I was part of the original urban planning of Dubai for the next 50 years, from the 70s. And that's why I'm so positive about the future, because I saw in Dubai possibilities, dreams can be translated into reality. So I'm trying to influence my own country. I hope we have less bureaucracy and red tape. And we also have so many obsolete laws that make us less globally competitive. And I write books and I have articles published every week. And part of our advocacy is really sharing with government policymakers the best practices in the world that are applicable in our country. Of course, Indonesia is much larger than the Philippines, and we have a bigger economy. And yeah, so that's the airport, international gateway to the Philippines, aside from Metro Manila. If there are still 2 more big projects, but just cut me off if I exceed the 20 minutes. This one is Pampanga, a province just 50 kilometers from Metro Manila. Again, it's a good opportunity to create urban growth centers to decongest Metro Manila. So this province is equivalent to 3 times Singapore and 2 times Hong Kong. And my proposal there, my company's proposal is create 4 metropolitan areas. Megalopolis is several metropolis, metropolis several cities. So agropolis, the farm and the city, agropolis. So it's farm-driven land uses, but it's still multi-use, mixed use. Ecopolis, the environment, ecology, and the city. Again, more but also different uses. Place to live, work, shop, and dine. Aquapolis, there's a swampy place there, so the water and the city. Aerotropolis, airport-driven metropolis, that's the Clark that we also master plan. Again, connectivity, corridors, and so on. And I hope we'll be able to get to Mindanao because I only have 5 minutes left. So introducing circumferential roads, radial roads, connecting with the adjacent provinces, strong connectivity with Metro Manila and the rest of Luzon, the largest island in the Philippines. So these are parts of the government-private sector partnership, and these are done in competition, and luckily we've been winning government projects by competition. Many of the foreign investors now are investing in Clark and also in this province of Pampanga, both international and national developers, and even some. One way of the congestion Metro Manila is, of course, relocate the government offices and also educational institutions and improve on our roadways. Because our roadways, unfortunately, it's been biased for the automobile. Even if only 2% of Filipinos own cars and 100% of Filipinos are pedestrians. Once you leave your car, you're a pedestrian. So part of, when we do plans, we go beyond the terms of reference of government, and not just immediate action program, short-term, medium-term, long-term, and visionary, more than 100 years. And this is an intermodal transit terminal, parking for buses, jeepneys, taxis, and so on. So with rainwater harvesting on the rooftop with solar roof, all of these are beyond our scope of work, but to influence architectural typology. Even if we will not be the architects in the future of this development, hopefully we'll get most of them, but we give design guidelines as well. Even bus dedicated lanes, which you have in Jakarta, you're ahead in bus dedicated lanes in the middle of the road. And my advocacy personally in our companies, the road corridor should be 1/3 for people, pedestrians and bicycles, 1/3 for landscaping, trees and landscaping, because it takes at least 10 trees to recover the oxygen of the carbon monoxide per car. So we are fortunate because when we win government project, part of our advocacy, we're able to influence policy decision makers. So here we had to talk to 23 mayors and 1 governor and 2 congressmen. Fortunately, the congresswoman there is our former president, Macapagal Arroyo. So we try also to, this Tourist Information Center, as much practicable, influence from the indigenous architecture of the place. And this is Pampanga River, polluted. It has to be dredged, make it navigable, just like when during time of the Spanish colonization, and make the river a waterfront. How many more minutes? 2 minutes. Sir, can I
You can have it's a very interesting, so go ahead, 3-5 minutes. I think everybody will appreciate it. No worry.
So we go to Mindanao. Mindanao has been, so these are 8 local government units. So we had to talk to 8 mayors, 8 councils, the national government, and we changed the paradigm of Mindanao's backdoor to the Philippines to make it front door to the Philippines. Gateway from ASEAN, IAGA, and international airport, maybe even bigger than the Clark Airport we showed you, and 3 local government units. 3 cities now are competing for the location. So we only gave the international standard for the airport conceptually, and more walkable, bikeable, more open spaces, and Davao City is so congested also. So we propose to them the tall buildings should go outside the congested areas. And waterfront is a prime real estate. Just like in Dubai, they only had 70 kilometers of natural waterfront. So Sheikh Mohammed decided to do the Palm Islands and artificial creeks. And in the Philippines, I think we have the 3rd longest coastline in the world. Indonesia is number 2. Canada is number 1. So international seaports, also the progressive infrastructure. We're working with the Mindanao Development Authority. They were the ones who bidded it out for the design planning competition. And there was a lot of consultation, private sector, public sector, even foreign investors. I hope cruise ship tourism will come back. We also got it there. I'm a director of the ASEAN Terminal Inc. also, 40% owned by Dubai Ports World, DP World. So we should really improve our maritime also. So again, very well, Mindanao has lush greenery. It's so easy to have landscaping there. Walkable, bikeable, more ice in the street, in the public realm. When you have more ice in the public realm, better security. I also learned security by design in one of my special courses in Harvard. Criminals are not scared of high walls, but they're scared when there are more ice in the street. They're scared of windows when potential witnesses appear. Even the paving pattern is the Islamic Mindanao arts and arts. Even here, the paving pattern. This is the night market. We elevated it from the road so that they don't close the road anymore. It can be a 24-hour market. So lots of trees and landscaping. And urban renewal for Davao, Chinatown. Even the architectural typology is Mindanao architecture, Islamic architecture influences. So the intermodal transit terminal, jeepneys, buses, and will be interconnected with the Mindanao Railway under construction now. Even pedestrian bridges, we propose it to be well landscaped, activate the area so that people will be encouraged to use the pedestrian skywalks. Very well landscaped, shaded, and even handicap friendly, that even on a wheelchair you can go there. We try to influence architectural bridges, because our bridges in the Philippines are designed by contractors, with all due respect to the contractors. So we try to influence some architectural elements like viewing decks, again, bicycle lanes, pathways, walking ways, view decks, bus dedicated lanes and trucks and car lanes, and even the vertical clearance to accommodate cruise ships in the future when tourism gets back. I think in 2-3 years, tourism will come back. Davao, Metro Davao is 8% GDP growth rate, higher than the national growth rate of 5-6% before the pandemic. So there's a great potential for investments in Mindanao. And Mindanao is about the size of South Korea. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share. I hope I was not out of order sharing you this. It was an instant request, and I cannot share the budget because it's still not finally approved. But fortunately for the construction industry, 5.4% of our gross domestic product will go to the infrastructure. And the total budget, 25% will go to infrastructure. Thank you very much for the time and the opportunity to share. So on behalf of our PCCI President, Ambassador Rico, and my fellow directors of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry, thank you very much for allowing us to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Architect Palafox, for all the sharing and then the excellent insight by showing us all the Ecopolis project, Hydropolis project, Agropolis, and Aquapolis project. I'm one of the person that like to visit Manila actually, because being the chair of the MRA, BSSWG Business Working Group, we have been visiting ASEAN countries, and then Manila is one of our target to visit. I'm a good friend of Architect Robert Schack. You are president of your board of architect. And then I remember one lady, but I forgot the name, but we used to have a quarterly meeting all together. Yeah. So one more time, thank you very much for all the knowledge sharing. And then maybe later on, we will have many people will ask questions to you. And we wish Philippines more success in the coming future. So next, yes. So, okay, next, let's invite our third panelist, Mr. Lee Hengui, who will share his knowledge and experience as Executive Director of our Research Center, the Social Economic Research Center, the Associated Chinese Chamber of Commerce Industry of Malaysia, ACCCIM. The floor is yours, Mr. Lee. You can have 20-25 minutes because I think everybody during this pandemic time, people want to hear more from our neighbor country. How is Malaysia doing? Because if we just, for example, just now we heard how Architect Palafox explained to us how the project is really encouraging us that the future is there, life is still on, there's more project, more future, everybody has to be optimistic. So please, the time is yours. Take your time, 15-20 minutes, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ong. Actually, I don't mind give my time to our gentleman, architect Filiano from Philippines to share more of the potential of infrastructure spending in Philippines. Now, I'll pull out my slide to share the screen. So I hope all of you can see my slide. Okay,
yes.
Can you see that?
Yes,
okay,
very nice.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Time in Kuala Lumpur now is 5 o'clock. And I'm very happy to join the panelist discussion, in particular with two distinguished panelists there, which a lot of experience which I can tap on. Being an economist, I'm good in numbers. First of all, I would like to thank you, Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the organizer for inviting my president who is unable to join today because of the unforeseen circumstances. So he asked me to wakil Pak Tan Sri Ter to give a perspective on how the COVID-19 impact on the Malaysia construction industry. Like everyone country in ASEAN suffer a lot from the pandemic, and how do the government prepare the construction sector for a rebound, a steady rebound, which is now we are hopeful that the vaccine will be available globally and maybe come to the shore of ASEAN along the way, so that we can stabilize the consumers' confidence and investor confidence. And I'd like to share with you the case of Malaysia. I think my slide will have two areas. Firstly, I will go through what are the current development that we are facing now in the construction sector. And the area number two, I'll be sharing with you the prospect of recovery for Malaysia. The first thing to note is the construction sector prior to the COVID-19 had already experienced a prolonged period of consolidation since 2015. The growth has pulled back sharply from double-digit growth of 11.7% in 2014 to about 4.2% in 2018, and almost flat, almost 0 or 0.1% growth in last year. A lot of reasons contributed to the sharp pullback in the construction activity, as we've gone through a period of very strong and robust growth. We're past the peak, and now we saw some of the large infrastructure had almost completed, near completion, and we have seen a smaller contribution coming from the real estate sector. As you know, Malaysia had built a lot of property, residential property, commercial space, retail space, that had somewhat contributed to oversupply in the real estate sector. So the whole construction sector had also been impacted by the oversupply. So by the first 9 months of this year, the moment we had this COVID-19 pandemic and government need to lock down for at least 1 month, a full lockdown, and subsequently they relaxed the lockdown, and now we are in a recovery, restricted movement control. But unfortunately, towards the end of September, we have the third wave of COVID-19. But on a cumulative basis, our COVID-19 cases as of yesterday is about 68,000, still quite low compared to other countries in the region. But the government don't want to take any risk. So they had implemented conditional MCO, movement control orders, in states which had high numbers of infection cases, when we call red zone. If your state have more than 40 numbers of cases, you are considered red zone. Okay, so I think these are in state capital, Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, Putrajaya, and some of the states near the Penang, on the east coast, and also the Sabah and Sarawak. No, Sabah, yes. But so far, I think we are still monitor the cases, and the cases now daily on average is about 4 digit. At times about 1,003, 1,004. We have seen highest close to 2,000. As of yesterday, it has come down to 3-digit number. I think we may have to continue to control the virus and also implement the SOP. So because of all this, construction output contracted sharply by 21.3% in the first 9 months of this year. The sharpest was in the second quarter. As you can see in the chart there, we have a sharp contraction and subsequently we rebound, but it's still negative. It's a smaller negative now. Why? Because we expect the overall economy to rebound next year. And the GDP contraction for this year, we are expecting between -5 to -5.5%. For next year, it will rebound at least to 6.5 to 7.5%. And the sector that will ride through with this will be construction, manufacturing sector, even your services sector. So the Ministry of Finance, on the whole, expect the construction sector to rebound by 13.9% next year, coming from this year a sharp decline of 18.7% in 2020. So if you look at all the subsector, as I can see from slide here, the one that really dragged down the activity of the construction industry is residential and non-residential sector, which I explained to you because of the overhang. But the civil engineering and specialized construction activity also has slowed down sharply because of the disruption from the COVID-19, and there also mobility problem, given that the construction sector hire about 1.4 million workers, and most of these workers are foreign workers. I think given that we are still very concerned about the virus spread, I think the government continue to apply very strict SOP, standard operating procedure, to ensure the construction sector, the workers working in the construction sector fully comply with SOP in order to prevent the wave 3 from spreading to not just within themselves, but also to the public. So I think to some extent, this will slow down the activity of the construction sector, at least for now, and hopefully by next year, once we have the vaccine or people are more fully comply with the SOP, you may see some recovery or some returning of activity in the construction sector or even in the real estate sector. So I would like to share you the slide here. What are the measures that have taken so far by the government to ease the impact of the COVID-19 on construction industry? Some of the measures are very direct to help the employer, to help the business, to help the SME to ease their cash flow problem. I think during the COVID-19, everyone are facing the same problem, the 3C. What are the 3C? The first one is the cash flow, second one is the cost, and third one is the credit cost. So I think the first reaction by the government of Malaysia and the Central Bank of Malaysia, Bank Negara Malaysia, is to provide a lot of support, whether it's a fiscal spending support, but also monetary policy support to ensure the impact on all sectors, including construction sector, will be somewhat minimized. Yeah? Yes, there will be a significant damage. This is a very unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, a health crisis, which had caused a massive destruction on the activity, the business and economic activity. So I think so far the government has rolled out 305 billion ringgit, or equivalent to 21.3% of GDP stimulus to prevent Malaysian economy from sinking into a deep recession. And they also implement social economic projects plus public infrastructure projects over the medium term to support the economy and also to support the public investment and the construction sector. So given that property is part of the construction related activity, the government also introduced some measures to help to spur the demand for property. These are for the medium price property, like home ownership campaign, stamp duty exemption, and also they also allow exemption of real property gain tax, which means that if you buy a property and you make money when you dispose of a property, the gain that you derive will be exempted from paying tax. So these are short-term measures to spur the real estate activity and help the construction side. On the bank, the government of Malaysia cut the interest rate aggressively by 125 basis points is to ease the cost of borrowing to help those who have high debt level and also the businesses in terms of credit cost. And the government also introduced a wage subsidy program, which is very important. That is help to ease the cash flow of the employer, including construction player, so that they can help to keep the employee. So you look at the current unemployment rate in Malaysia has continued to improve. Now the September level is about 4.6% of unemployment rate. Of course, that it will take a long time before we go back to pre-pandemic level, about 3.3%. And then the bank also introduced loan moratorium and also targeted loan repayment assistance to help individual and business. This is also very important because a lot of companies in the construction side, the contracts had reduced sharply and they can't have cash flow. That's why the banks give them some loan repayment assistance, either in the form of you don't have to pay your loan for next 3 months, or your amount of installment will be reduced, yeah. But you have to show some documentation to the banks, and the banks will process immediately. And the other thing is the COVID-19 Act. I think this act, something similar like Singapore. I'm not sure whether Indonesia have or even Philippines. This is a very important act because this act will provide some temporary buffer to a lot of industry, a lot of businesses who cannot perform their contractual obligation due to the disruption from the COVID-19, due to the lockdown. So like maybe you have orders to be fulfilled, but because of the lockdown, whole logistic, whole supply chain have been disrupted. You cannot fulfill the orders. So these are the act that put in place to ease the obligation burden of the industry and the businesses. And last point is in the 2021 budget, the government had provided 69 billion development expenditure. These are for capital spending allocation. The purpose of this development expenditure is to revitalize the domestic demand and help to support all sectors in the economy. And for your information, this development expenditure allocation is the highest ever in Malaysia budget history. And this is a big amount. I think the challenge is to fully implement the development expenditure allocation to ensure the multiplier effect on the economy will be felt not just on the individual household, but also on the business sector. So how construction sector can rebound from the pandemic? I think all of us agree, construction alone to GDP is small, 4.9% of GDP. But construction has a lot of interlinkages, backward and forward, with 140 subsectors of the major sector of the economy, like manufacturing, transport, commerce, trading, and financial services. So it is important for the government to revive the construction sector so as to support the overall economy. Yes, we are under the pandemic. The post-pandemic will be a different ball game, the different way of doing business. People will work from home, okay? And business will use a lot of digitalization, e-commerce. So I think as a construction player, as a builders, you must think ahead. What can I use to maximize my digital infrastructure or AI to help to grow the industry? At the same time, should there be any big crisis coming along? It could be 3 years, 5 years down the road, there's another pandemic. So you can still function orderly. Because so far, before the pandemic, none of us had this experience. All the government tried and narrow. But now we had the experience. And now with the digital and AI, IR4, so I think it's important for the construction player to think way ahead on how to prepare for the next cycle of whether it's a crisis or even related to health pandemic. So I think the total budget allocated for next year, as I mentioned to you, total DE is 69 billion. Construction-related expenditure is about 37.5 billion ringgit, which is about 53.7% are construction-related projects. So these are the recovery prospects I'm looking for Malaysia construction sector over the medium term. I think though this year remains challenging, and I think for next year, it's very much dependent on when we can have the vaccine and so control the virus development. And these are the catalysts to drive the construction sector. The first one, large-scale infrastructure project. As you know, for those who have been Kuala Lumpur, we have MRT2, we are building MRT2, LRT3, light rail transit, Pan Borneo Highway that will benefit Sabah, Sarawak, and also the Kalimantan along the way. And then we also have mega project, outstanding one. The one that already ongoing construction in progress is the ECRL, East Coast Rail, the line, which is involved the funding from the China ASEAN Bank. And the second one is a high-speed rail cutting from Kuala Lumpur all the way to Singapore. I think we are still waiting for finalization between the two country governments. Yesterday, they had a webinar and a statement will be issued quite soon because this is the second round of the postponement. Two sides of the government will have to decide what form and how much of budget they will have to spend on this high-speed rail and whether there will be some scale down of the high-speed rail. And the government also going to start on the MRT3, about 20 to 25 billion ringgit. And also the last one is the Johor Singapore Rapid Transit System, which is linked between Johor and Singapore. And this will start as early as January next year in terms of land acquisition, in terms of the starting the first phase of the project. And the other thing will be concern is about continued overhang and unsold property in the commercial and residential property may still dampen the overall construction activity. So this is the list of projects which I want to share with you. I think later I can share this slide and then you can do some reference. These are in the transport sector for upgrading, expansion and maintenance of infrastructure. There will be projects related to energy and public utility, communication sector. I think the communication sector, in particular, the e-commerce digitalization will be the key driver for Malaysia going forward. As like any other country, we need to really go forward in terms of going to IR4 and help the industry, help the household, help the individual, how to embrace technology. And that is the key driver going forward. And the other thing, also we spend a lot of money on healthcare center, whether it's the procurement of medical services, vehicle, equipment, construction of hospital, and also upgrading of the hospital. So the last one slide which I want to share with you, what I think, how to apply more digitalization in construction. I think 2 days ago, I received a very interesting video, which is sharing on how the mining industry in China use AI to extract mining resources, which a person just control from the control room, and they can control at least excavator about going to like 10 units, lorry transport, there's no people there, everything can be used, the AI to perform this. All this can be also applied in the case of construction and building. So I think construction sector, if you want to unlock the fullest potential from 5 years from now, we have to start now. I think the government, the agency involved will have to facilitate and work together with the industry player on how to move forward. I think there will be a lot of revolution in terms of digitalization, how to use technology, which I agree with our speaker from Philippines, architect Felino, talking about greener, cleaner, more productive, and more inclusive. And if you look at some of the example, how the construction in businesses so far, they have used some of the digital or technology, whether the drone to do some survey on the site rather than human there. And people are talking about how to have a virtual tours of the site, can reduce all these risks related to the COVID-19, and how to keep the project moving and the staff are safe and without impacting on your productivity, on your time frame or your progress of the project implementation. And people are talking about whether use very basic smart helmets and wearables that can be adopted to improve the employee experience. At the same time, we never compromise on the safety and the health of the construction worker, while also keeping the productivity of the workers ongoing, and improve the work processes. And we, from the chamber side, in particular from my think tank, together with our ACCIM, the Chinese Chamber, and also the National Chamber, we have constantly engaging with the government and also the relevant agency to give our inputs. What are the things that government can do in the medium term or the long term to help the industry? I think the first thing we want the government to task the Construction Industry Board Development as the lead agency to help industry to understand the value of digital and what are the skill set and training are needed to prepare the workforce of the construction industry, prepare for the new era, and provide some incentive and grants to encourage the adoption of innovation and technology, and lower the relative cost of capital. Because as you know, if you want the industry player, in particular a small contractor, to invest in some form of technology or automation, the cost of investment is very high. So they had to give some incentive, like accelerated capital allowance. In terms of managing the workforce, I think what short with Malaysia is that skill set is a big challenge for Malaysia, not just the construction, but also for other industry. I think these are the area that we can, we all of us in ASEAN country can share about on how to improve our workforce capability in terms of skill in order to embrace technology. And lastly, we continue to emphasize to the government, in particular the local government authority, the pihak berkuasa tempatan, to ease the construction costs, the compliance and regulatory costs, so that you can help the industry to be more competitive. Among the measures that we propose is to allow extensions of time or waiver of the liquidated certain damages caused by the MCO, the Movement Control Order, or other COVID-19 supply chain issue. We also ask the government to consider to allow an automatic release of mechanism for Bumiputra quota. This is in the property sector. As you know, every state government have their Bumiputra quota. For example, you build 10 units of houses, certain number of units it must reserve for Bumiputra, and you are selling them at a discount. So after the Bumiputra stock were not unsold, you must advertise in the paper for few times. So if no taker, then you can release the Bumiputra lots to sell to non-Bumiputra. So you can see that certain states have their own rulings, their terms and conditions. So we want the government to introduce a very transparent, automatic release of mechanism for the Bumiputra quota. And third, we also want the Kementerian Perumahan Kerajaan Tempatan, the local government, to expedite the approval of the HDA account. These are part of a regulation to release some of the money, excess money in less than 1 month rather than holding too long. This will ease the cash flow of the construction player and lower the land conversion premium and allow conversion premiums to be paid only upon the launching of each parcel. And we also want the utility company to reduce the capital contribution charges by at least 50%. These are the holding costs. These are the holding costs to the construction industry and also to the property developer. So we hope the government can consider to lower that. And also the Bumiputra discount, yes, can apply to first-timer house buyer, but we also want a free market. Maybe the price is up to 700,000. For those who about 1 million and reach the Bumiputra, we should not be given discount. I think it should be based on needs and your income for BT. And we also request the government loan department to release the payment to developer in less than 2 weeks. This is about holding period. No, why should you hold their down payment or their excess money for so long? And given that now they are facing a lot of cash flow problem, and also provide incentive to ease the investment cost and to encourage them to adopt the industrial building, IBS technology, and build a sustainable, eco-green, and smart home. I think with this, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. Then we'll take questions during the panel discussion. Thank you, Pak Ong. I will stop sharing and give you the...
Okay, Mr. Lee, your time just nice. You just make it very nice. And thank you for sharing your Malaysia experience, how facing this COVID, and then your some idea how to rebound for the future. Actually, I'm one of the also person that like to visit Malaysia because I have the second home there.
Okay,
the M2H
welcome.
program.
Yeah.
So we are
But
missing already.
correct,
Usually, every month I've been visiting Malaysia and then work very closely with CIDB because our National Construction Development Board is actually I invite CIDB, but they apologize because of the tight time limited.
I see.
They cannot join us today.
Yeah.
All right. So now, so ladies and gentlemen, we have listened and followed the presentation from our three panelists. Now let's go to our question and answer session. I already received few questions here. Although these specific question to specific panelists, but I can see that we also need some advice from our other panelists. What is they will be doing, because this is all related to policies in each country. Maybe it's a different. First is a question from engineer Bambang Sujiantoko, Krakatau Consultant Company. Krakatau Consultant, I don't know whether this is a private or government, but this is directly to Pak Dandung. The question to Pak Dandung Sri. Question is whether the postpone of the project will be implemented next year. What about the increase in construction cost due to the increase in material and services? Another question is, what about small construction that have experienced the impact of COVID this year? Is there any attention from the government in construction work next year? Meaning that, is there any cost adjustment for the government or even private project due to the COVID pandemic situation? That is the question. I think I would like to have Pak Dandung to answer, but also share the experience or what will be the policy from Philippines and also from Malaysia. So after Pak Dandung, maybe Architect Palafox also can share the sharing the knowledge from Philippines and Mr. Lee from Malaysia. Please, Pak Dandung, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ong. Thank you for your, I think, many questions about the postponing of the project. Yeah. So the question is how much price, how much cost actually when the project is postponed until the next year. As long as I know that many of my friends of contractor, most of them cut it until 50% of the total budget actually. But the question, how much additional cost? I think I cannot answer exactly how much additional cost, because it depends on type of project, type of the location, and etc. and etc. But if the project already prepared for 100% progress, but in the middle of the way cut, let's say 50%, of course will be big problem, because all the material or maybe already purchased it, equipment already prepared, already already bought, and something like that. So I think will be, in my feeling, maybe will be increased about 10 until 20%. It's my feeling, but I don't know exactly the cost. But exactly will be increased very significantly. And then about the small and enterprises, maybe this question. Yes, it's the most suffer, because the money is very limited, and then also the access of the financial support also limited. If the project stop in the middle, of course the big problem. I don't know, at the Malaysia and Philippines, maybe they can sharing about the middle and the small enterprises of the contractor. If many project postpone, delay, or maybe cancel. This is my short question, Pak Ong. I cannot answer exactly about the number, but I think.
But maybe Pak Bambang, Pak Dandung, the Pak Bambang question is more: is there any effort from Kadin, for example, to propose to government because of this any price escalation, so that can protect the contractor from having trouble, a kind like incentive? Is there any incentive program or not?
Sure. So during early of the pandemic, I think Cardin and also Kapensi, my association, talked directly to the Minister of Public Works. We talk about the real problem on the site, and then after that, already followed by some policy that already I mentioned in my presentation. For example, about the escalation of the price, and then about the punishment because we cannot finish the project on the right time. This, I think, it's, I remember we meet with the Pak Menteri about on the April or May, and with webinar, of course, with the virtual meeting, and Pak Basuki, our Minister of Public, was very open, and here our aspiration and followed by some regulation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Architect Palafox, you want to share how is the experience in Philippines if a small contractor facing some problem? Do government give them incentive during the COVID or even post-pandemic period?
Yeah, yes, sir. Especially for the micro, small, medium industries, any industry, including the construction industry. And for the big ticket items, the big projects of infrastructure projects of government, they have to beat the deadline because some of them have the foreign funding like JICA, ADB, World Bank. And for the locally funded projects, if you don't use it, the funding, if you don't use it, you lose it. It goes back to national treasury. So we'll have to request again next year. So they are encouraged to use their funds within the year. So I think that's kind of an incentive also to finish them on time. And also there's what they call here cash transfer for the poor, including construction workers. They were given cash dole out for equivalent of months. And fortunately in our country, our economic team, finance, trade industry, central bank is controlling even the inflation rate to 2%. And credit is very relatively easier during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much, Architect Palafox. And Mr. Lee, how is the experience in Malaysia?
Okay, I can share with you. I think in terms of the financial losses for the construction industry during the lockdown or during the early stage of the pandemic was very substantial. If you look at the construction value output, in terms of output produced in the second quarter, is only 19.8 billion. Compared to first quarter where we don't see the major impact from the pandemic, it's about 35 billion. So it's a decline close to about 16 billion, big numbers, a big number to the construction player. And to be frank, there are a lot of small contractor players, whether you are small builders or medium-sized, all their job progress all affected badly. Okay, so I think the cash flow was significantly impacted. That's why at the very beginning of the lockdown, the government introduced what we call loan moratorium. That means 6 months, you don't have to pay to service any of your loan, including the repayment and interest payment. So that will help to ease your cash flow because you don't have money, you don't have income, right? So you have to pay your worker as well. So one aspect of that is a loan moratorium. And for some who wants to have some project which they want to carry on, but with some little progress, because the whole thing will be disrupted by your supply chain and maybe some of the materials that you want, you may not get in time. So the government introduced a wage subsidy program. So for example, if you employ less than, depends on the number of workers, the maximum they subsidize you is about 200. But the latest measure now we increase to even close to 500 now. So maybe for one worker, they subsidize you 600. That helps to ease your operating cash flow, and you can help to retain your worker, at least you can still work on. And the other thing, to talk about big project, I think the one that surprised us is the ECRL, the China-funded East Coast Rail Light project. The progress is still on track, surprisingly, despite they use a lot of workers from China, but I think maybe they managed to have some local workers that will continue that. But to be more objective on this impact, I would say so far whatever ongoing one is still there. To some extent, the concern is shortage of workers, especially the foreign workers. I think if you talk to the industry player, they are facing very shortage of foreign workers, and whether these are legal or illegal, I'm not going to drop further into this, but I just to let you know, because starting yesterday, the government has made it compulsory to test all the foreign workers in 3 sectors: construction, manufacturing, and plantation. Yeah, starting yesterday. So with this testing for the COVID-19, you may scare a lot of people. Those who illegal may go hiding, but the government also want to legalize the illegal. So we yet to see whether this will further impede the progress of the project, whether you're big, small, or large. So at this moment, we still have to track carefully. But I think, as I mentioned to you just now, given that the government has set a lot of projects to implement for next year to support the construction activity, I believe they have to address this issue, the shortage of foreign workers in the construction sector. At the same time, to also assure the illegal foreign workers, if you come out to do the testing, if you are negative, we will be legalize you to become legal, so that you can be employed again in the, whether it's in construction or manufacturing or services. Okay, this is so much I can share with you, Pak Ong. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Now we have another question, also direct to Pak Dandung. This is from Ministry of Public Work Bandung, I think from the Pengairan, I think water resources and all this canal development. He's just noticed that the share price of our state-owned company in the last few days may be going up significantly, 45 to 60% share. There is bullish in the Indonesian Bursa Saham. What is the government effort to use this incoming capital to catching up for the ketinggalan program konstruksi tahun 2020? Because of the pandemic, the slowdown of the project, how is the government effort to use this capital to speed up the project? There is a question to Pak Dandung. I think this is very specific local question. I'm not sure whether Philippines and Malaysia also the same, the share price of the construction company jump up 60%. I'm not sure, but this is to Pak Dandung. Maybe Pak Dandung can answer.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Ong. I think it is the about the state-owned company that's already. You hear my voice?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's about the state-owned company challenge. I think every country have the facing the same. I don't know, the Malaysia and Singapore, because as informed to my friend from Malay and Philippines, that state-owned company and the construction sector in Indonesia is very major. They have the very great share of the construction sector. And then, of course, if any investor also doing the same thing, because they are think if they are invest or buy some share in the pasar saham Indonesia, they are prefer to buy a state-owned company. This is the trouble, is the big problem of the private sector, Pak Ong. So, so I don't know, this is the government policy, but of course, I don't know how to solve it. But from the private sector, need to improve ourselves to increase our capacity, and then also we always push to the government, to regulator, because sometimes we are not battle in the same field, because state-owned company have the some privilege, but private sector does not have the some kind of the privilege. like access on the financing, permission, close to the government officer or something like that. So I don't know how to solve it, but I think for private sector need more to improve the capacity, and then we can battle at the same field at the competition. I mean.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dandung. There is a question from a lady to Mr. Lee. Ms. Gali Friyatna, CV Graha. The question is, what bit of tangible evidence does the construction industry from survival to rebound have at the moment, so that it can run well in the future, so that it can survive well? Did you catch the question?
Okay, you are talking about whether what sort of tangible evidence we can see now, right? Where construction sector is set to rebound from the slump from the pandemic. Very good question. I will share with you my experience.
But this is more also including construction industry, so
I know,
including the supply chains.
Correct. So I think if you, based on what I'm tracking Malaysia construction indicators, including the whole country indicators, definitely I believe we have seen the worst of the worst. The worst of the decline in output of the economy and also construction in the second quarter. Why I say that? Firstly, I can look at some of the indicator that coming from overseas first. I think I need to relate to this. You see, when the external sector, exports is a very major contribution to the Malaysian economy, whether we export E&E, electronics, electrical, palm oil, crude oil, or chemical product, all sort of products. Once your export earnings continue to improve, which means that there will be effect on the domestic economy in terms of the employment, in terms of the wages, and people will start to slowly come back to spend, on condition that the virus future development will be controlled and also the vaccine will be available. I'm not expecting 100% for everyone in Malaysia or any of the ASEAN country to get vaccinated. But the moment advanced economy, US, Europe, or Russia or China, they are going to have vaccine ready, the global confidence will improve. Once the global confidence improve, and investor confidence will come back slowly, and that will filter through on your domestic economy. So that's why when I just now share with you, if I look at all this, we are seeing some early signs of stabilization. One of the barometer that we always see is the stock market. Stock market, share price. These are investors from Malaysian, also investor from foreigner. Of course, foreign investor had not been buying a lot from Malaysia share because of other reason, partly because of the concern about political uncertainty for Malaysia. But all this evidence, tangible, it could be qualitative, could be anecdotal. And when I talk to some of the players in the construction sector and also other sector, they are slightly more positive, not very optimistic, but at least they are seeing some light, a little light in the tunnel, which can help the construction industry player. That's why I think I mentioned there, I share with you why the Malaysian government has budgeted such a big DE, development expenditure for next year, the highest ever in history. And our budget deficit and the total budget spending for next year also is the highest ever. Why? Because the government want to make sure that the economy is still growing, and they realize that one of the sector also important is the construction sector. That's why they've introduced some of the projects, whether it's in the healthcare, whether in the transport, whether it's in energy, or whether it's in the telecommunication sector, in order to revive back the private investment and public investment, hence the impact on the construction side. But I want to also cautious that, whatever projection made by the government also depends on how effective they drive the programs and projects. Yeah, so there will be smaller project to help the small contractor, and there will be mid-size and large size to help those listed company. Yeah, just now our Pak Dandong also talking about share performance, and the other I can sidetrack a bit to talk about. I think you're asking about whether private sector players versus the government sector player. In the case of Malaysia, we have GLC, Government Linked Company. Government Linked Company, some of the big one also listed in the stock market. And government linked company, they have big capital, and sometimes they also go into sector which private sector also in. So that's why you have concern about not same level playing field. Government linked company, biasa, they will get some better treatment from the government side, whether contracts, whatever. So I think these are the issue that most countries are facing, especially those countries that have large presence of the government linked company in the economy. Yeah, thank you, Pak Ong.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Since we aim to finish our program by 4 p.m. Jakarta time, so not too late for Mr. Lee and Mr. Palafox. So I select one or two more questions. And then there are some questions specific to Pak Dandung, because together in Jakarta, they can ask by email or even call Pak Dandung later on. This is one question from Mr. Thomas Hartono, Chairman of Kadin ICCI ASEAN and Chairman Kadin Committee Philippines. A question to Mr. Palafox is, I'm interested of development in Mindanao, especially in Davao City. As my experience, Mindanao and Davao was still now modern developed now. I think in the developing maybe mean like that. Based on Mr. Duterte, Mindanao will be developed also using government fund. Is your project, Palafox, is including the proposal of Mr. Duterte also? So you need partner investor too, or you would develop it by your group? Please contact me, email, everything here. We can send to you later on, Mr. Palafox. You may make a little bit of comment.
Yeah, you have email. Yeah, it's Mindanao is more private government partnership. We are just design consultants. We are not developers. And in fact, the funding of our planning was the Mindanao Development Authority, which is under the Office of the President. So there's also the program of government that we call it Balik Provincia, going back to the provinces. And Mindanao really has still have the absorption capacity for more population. Even looking long term for me as a planner, we need, I think, 50 new cities by 2050 with 40 million more Filipinos. And Mindanao has the absorption capacity, has the very high development potential. And private sector investors are already going there. And stimulated by government infrastructure like the Mindanao Railway, which will be interconnected with Metro Davao. I hope I was able to
okay, thank you, Mr. Yeah, later on we will give you the contact. He's from the Chamber of Commerce. I would like to have a follow-up contact with you. This is good. And then there is one question to Mr. Lee from Mr. Harley Muhammad Hafil, RPE. I don't know whether this RPE is registered professional engineer under the MRE program or RPE is a regional PE. A question, Mr. Lee, what your opinion of investor chances to invest for Indonesia industrial project after Omnibus Law? As to brief you, Mr. Lee, as explained by Pak Dandung earlier, that our government now try to deregulate all the complicated law into one, they call it omnibus law, which is to invite investor. Maybe you have heard the issue.
I heard, yeah.
So is there any Malaysian interested to come to Indonesia? I think that is the question.
Okay, this is asking about whether Malaysian investor investing in Indonesia, not the other way.
Yeah. Is a Malaysian investor interested to come to Indonesia?
Of course. Malaysia investor always want to invest outside the country. Firstly, Malaysia market is very small. Yeah, population about 34.3 million, and very saturated domestic market. And the government has never stopped any Malaysian company to invest outside the country. I think formerly I was the CIMB Investment Bank Group chief economist, and then during my time, I think CIMB also spread their wings to Indonesia market. So I think we welcome the law, which priority is to facilitate investment, to ease the cost of doing business in Indonesia. And I think one thing I like to compliment the Indonesian government is on very progressive in terms of reduce the corporate income tax. Yeah, that is very progressive, which Malaysia now is still higher compared to you. I think we have 24% corporate tax rate, and Indonesia by next year I think will bring down to 20%. If I'm not mistaken, and this year is 22%. So there's a lot of opportunity that we can work together from Malaysia side and Indonesia, and more so now with the ASEAN. With the ASEAN, you have trade facilitation, services, investment. There's a lot of things that we can work together. And we, within the ASEAN, I would say ASEAN centrality is important for us to get united and get stronger post COVID-19 with the support of our China and India. And I think ASEAN, there's a lot of interrelated type of connectivity. Yeah, if we get our connectivity infrastructure right. So I think I would certainly say that Malaysia investor would always want to venture out of Malaysia, and Indonesia is one of the top priority for kita, for Malaysian to go there. And the industry which we are interested, it could be something similar, oil and gas industry, but I think I would advise people to go into the more the consumer market side. And also in industry which is related to more digitalization, e-commerce. This is the market that we have to go. We can always build. Sorry to not that I'm trying to be very cautious. I think the building side is something that we have to think again post-COVID. Some people may think about, because of a lot of people work from home. So a lot of space will be available. So one thing, how you turn the space into warehousing to support e-commerce, to support all this yang kita buat online business, but you need a lot of storage space. So these are things that we have to think out of the box, how to transform some of the empty space into area where we can support the new industry. Yeah, thank you, Paong.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. So because of time limited, there is quite a few more questions, but let's pick one, we'll conclude. And then for all the other questions that not answer, the organizer will answer by email. You also still entitled for the lucky draw or any gift from the organizer. Don't worry about that one. This is a question from Mr. Phúc Yin from private company to Pak Dandung. The question is, if the direction is to have more specialized contractor, reducing the numbers of general contractor, will it increase the project cost, seeing more specialist contractor involved in the project? And if the general contractor are still needed, what do you think the ideal ratio for general contractor, vice versa with the specialist contractor in our country? I think this is related to Kadin policy, Ministry of Public Policy, and then the rule of GAPENSI to try to encourage more specialized contractor in Indonesia. That is a question, Pak Dandung. Silakan.
Okay, thank you, Paong. It's the very interesting question because this issue is become more and more attacked from association and from government. If you learn from our number of association under Kadin like GAPENSI, Gapexindo, and etc., almost all of them, as I said, maybe 99% is general contractor. So it is crazy because there is not many company wish to work detailing in specialists. So we try to push them to take some specialists. Not all can everything can do everything, no. But maybe let's say 20% or 25% start to move to the specialists. So because if the specialists, they are very expert on that, they can produce the very high quality of the construction quality and something like that. So in my opinion, even I don't know exact number, but 20% contractor have to move to the specialist contractor. The rest, of course, is up to them, become the state general. It's no problem as well. This is my opinion, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Pak. This is a quick question one. I think this is also to you from Pak Muhammad Fari Company, Jasa Marga, related to business question addressed to Pak Dandung. Is there any new regulation from the government to the contractor owners to make sure the Indonesian worker to stay healthy? Because as we know, the construction field always happen in field and always meet everyone. Alicius Widianto from Dasuspun. Okay.
Okay, I think the Minister of Public already published the regulation about minister instruction. I don't know the name exactly, but it's the instruction of minister. But of course, will be followed by some other regulation. For example, all the workers have to healthy. For example, before they are enter the site, they have to testing something like that. Of course, will be generate cost. And as the regulation of the minister is allowed, we can make additional contract to do some testing. So everybody, every worker get enter the site, our project, make sure that is already negative of the COVID. I think this very simple way. If they are positive, of course, they will back to the home, stay to recover, but it's already healthy, I think get the end. It's very simple, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Pak. All right.
Yes.
So since the time is up, thank you very much. Now I think we have to conclude our panel discussion today.
Maybe I advise maybe panelists from Malay, from Philippines to give some short message to everybody here.
Okay. All right. So actually, I want to conclude the three insight and then the final statement from each of you.
Okay.
It's okay, Pak. So
yes,
I make three. The moderator make three note that for our discussion today. From Indonesia, Pak Dandung, despite the statistics show that the infected is increased, but recovery rate is also getting much better, and people scare less. And the government already worked very hard to prepare the vaccine. Hopefully by early this year, we already have the vaccine, and Indonesia government already will push the development of infrastructure project next year to make the economy grow back again. And then also the government policy for the new investment law, and then the omnibus law, hopefully can attract investors from overseas to come more to Indonesia, and then to make ASEAN again as a good place for investment. And from our Philippine counterpart, Architect Palafox, infrastructure project is still to create economic growth. We need infrastructure project. However, due to this COVID pandemic, we need the human life need to adopt to the COVID, because we will be 19, 20, 21. But anyway, we live with it. Philippine government also increase infrastructure project, and then Architect Palafox also show us many future project in Philippines. So life is still on, then we'll continue. And then from Malaysia, Mr. Lee shared the experience with us how the Malaysia experienced the COVID, and then they have to restrict their operating procedure to tackle the COVID. And also Mr. Lee explained the government project in coming years. And one interesting thing is Mr. Lee also mentioned about artificial intelligence and then digitalization in construction industry. I think that's a key issue to be taken care in the future. And then special government policies to improve the economic growth. For example, some proposal from the association to unlock the few facility for Bumiputra, Kutas, and others. I think for closing statement, I will give each of the panelists 2 minutes to make the closing statement. I would like to turn it the other way. Mr. Lee is to first, and then Architect Palafox, and then closing Pak Dandung. Mr. Lee, time is yours for the closing statement.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ong. Actually, very good webinar today. I learned a lot from our two panelists and also from Pak Ong as a very good moderator. Excellent. And I would just simplify in a few words. I think I think ASEAN must work together, build for a better tomorrow. I think this is COVID-19 give us a very important lesson to learn that we should not take the nature for granted. Yeah, this is a very severe pandemic that none of us has gone through, and it's good that all the governments have taken the right step intervention to minimize the damage on the people. Most important priority is about the people, the healthcare of the people, and of course business will be suffer along the way. But I think if we get our act together, we definitely we can go through this, navigate through this tough time. And I always believe that when there's a crisis, we must turn that crisis into opportunity. And to have the opportunity, we also need to be supported by the government, work together with the private sector, and also we have to sharing our information among ASEAN countries. So this webinar gives us opportunity to share with each of you our country experience, how we fight the COVID, and how do we manage and go forward. So with that, last sentence, I think we have to be united and continue to engage with each other to face a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Palafox, time is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed for
closing statement.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to share, and thank you, Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, for hosting this, and thank you to moderator Mr. for managing us very well. And I think whether this is act of God or act of nature, this pandemic, it's an opportunity for all of us to reflect, to reimagine, to replan, and to reset, rebound, and recover. And for the construction industry, the big opportunity now is during this pandemic, we call it tactical urbanism, tactical infrastructure. What can be done during this pandemic? And for the construction industry, there will be a lot of retrofitting and renovation, like changing the land uses, changing the building footprint. Like offices can be used for other uses, and we've been also putting forward now new standards well into the new world order, like less enclosed areas, like restaurants should just be 1/3 kitchen, 30% kitchen, 20% enclosed, 50% outdoors. So the real estate and building industry now, we even architects, we have to design our buildings now like a healthcare facility. The challenge is how to make them aesthetically pleasing. So this pandemic is reshaping our cities, our buildings, and spaces. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Palafox. Pak Dandung, time is yours, Pak, for the final closing.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ong, for your opportunity. First, I like to thank to Mr. Felino and Mr. Lee that already share very valuable knowledge, valuable information about how we have to work together, fight together against this pandemic. As you know, ASEAN has been long time have a long time history of the togetherness. We have the similar culture, similar thing of way of thinking. So it is the time also when we have the same problem, we have to fight together as well. So today we only have the share from Philippines and Malaysia. Maybe the next day we can have share from others country, from Singapore, from Vietnam, for Thailand, and so on. Because maybe in Indonesia there is some good of the how to handle pandemic, but in the another sector maybe Malaysia have the good. Philippines, and Singapore someday. We have to share, to learn each other, so we can fight together from some goodness from others' country. And myself, and also at the name on behalf of the Kadin Indonesia, I'm quite optimistic, because from explanation from Mr. Felino and Mr. Lee, and the very near future, there are many projects, many planning of the construction and infrastructure. And also from Indonesia, I little bit forget that our government plan to move our capital to Borneo. It is a big opportunity, not for Indonesian engineer, for contractor, but I think from others country. Our country cannot build itself, ourselves, but we need help. We need capacity from neighbor. So I think very optimistic. Our new capital little bit suspend because of the pandemic. Our government has to relocate, to refocus the budget to the most important thing is the health and safety of our people. But I'm quite sure the program will be continue if the pandemic over already. So once again, thank you. This is very valuable sharing. This together working have to keep until tomorrow, until then, and we can strong together. Thank you, Pak Ong, and thank you, Mr. Felino. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Pak Dandung. Pengalaman yang sangat menarik bagi moderator dalam memandu diskusi panel webinar ini dengan para pakar dan dalam pembangunan infrastruktur ASEAN yang ahli dan berpengalaman di bidangnya. Tiba waktunya moderator mengundurkan diri dan mengembalikan waktu dan tempat kepada MC pembawa acara kita. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good luck.
Terima kasih, Pak Ong.
Terima kasih, Pak Lee. Mr. Felino, thank you very much.
See you in Philippines, in Manila, and see you in Malaysia.
Picture together. Can you take group photo?
Yeah, Miss MC to take over.
A picture.
Mr. MC.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Ong. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. It was a pleasure to have you all with us. And before we end this session, we ask all for the panelists to do a virtual photo session, which will be taken virtually by the committee. Make sure your position is in the Okay, everyone is ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I will be counting down in 3, 2, 1. Once more, I'll be counting down 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much, all the panelists. Okay, for all participants who wants to get e-certificate and presentation materials, these are the procedures that you should do. First, you screen, and then fill in the form provided with your complete personal data. The names written on the e-certificate will be based on the data you have submitted. E-certificate and presentation materials will be sent via email no later than 10 working days. An incorrect name and email address is beyond the responsibility of the committee. So please make sure the data that you submit is correct. For more information, please contact us at connect@tarsus.co.id. And that's our webinar event this time. See you again next year for another series of Infrastructure Connect Digital Series. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Best wishes for all of us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera.